Welcome to Instablogs Global Report. This is Sukhmani with fresh updates and more citizen voices from all over the world. Stories for the day are: foreigners laid off in Japanese downturn, child soldiers in Nepal struggling to reintegrate, child poverty costs Britain £25 billion a year, and India says no to refugee influx from Sri Lanka. Foreigners are the first to be laid off as Japanese companies struggle hard to cope up with the deepening crisis within the country. Many have already begun to leave Japan in search of employment elsewhere. CJ Zach Pina reflects upon what makes foreigners the first ones to lose their jobs.
This is Zach Pena, citizen journalist reporting from Japan for Instablogs. Foreigners are among the first laborers in Japan to lose their jobs as the global financial crisis eats into demand for cars, trucks, and motorcycles. The layoffs are the first evidence that the mushrooming economic meltdown in the United States and elsewhere is shaking the Japanese labor market as well. At the core of the trend are hard times for the Japanese car industry's #1 producer Toyota Motor Company and Nissan, Japan's third largest automaker, who are both forced into cutting back on domestic production. Most vulnerable to layoffs are the foreign workers who meet Japan's labor shortage as the country ages. Foreigners are often hired through temporary employment agencies so that they can be easily fired. They live in company housing, so they lose their apartments when they lose their jobs. There hasn't been a marked increase in homelessness, but anecdotes of foreigners having to move in with friends or relatives abound. Some foreign laborers have already abandoned Japan amid mounting trouble.
Rights groups in Nepal have said that more than 10,000 Maoist child soldiers never registered at UN-monitored camps need help in reintegrating with their communities. More than 3,000 child soldiers are still living in Maoist camps across the country. CJ Mukunda highlights the reasons preventing in reintegration of child soldiers with their communities.
This is Mukunda, citizen journalist reporting from Nepal on Instablogs. Maoist child soldiers in Nepal are facing tough problems in terms of their reintegration with their respective families. Many of these child soldiers are struggling as civilians, having lost the power they once had as feared rebels and paying the price for their stance during the 10-year civil war. Almost 3,000 child soldiers who have been confirmed as underage by the UN are still living in Maoist cantonments across the country, with the former rebels afraid they will be re-recruited by other armed groups if they are released. There are specifically concerns that they might join other armed groups, have had some degree of physical and even military training there. Although UNICEF and other children's organizations have started working with child soldiers both inside and outside the cantonments to facilitate their return home. The process, however, is expected to be a tedious one.
Researchers have found that Britain pays at least £25 billion a year to address the issue of child poverty. The full cost could be much higher since most conservative estimates were used in coming to the final figure. CJ Manta Thomas considers child poverty a shameful fact for a wealthy country such as the United Kingdom.
This is Amanda Thomas, citizen journalist from the UK, reporting on Instablogs. Britain has one of the worst rates of child poverty in the industrialised world, which is shaming this country. Around 3.6 million children, which represents 28% of the country's total child population, are living in poverty despite efforts by the government to tackle the problem. It is appalling that in Britain in 2008 there are children whose parents cannot afford even the basic necessities others take for granted, such as a warm winter coat and 3 meals a day. We are seeing a new determination to tackle poverty, but it is vital that we keep up the pressure on government to stick to its pledge to eradicate poverty completely by 2020. Suffering by children as a result of poverty is indefensible in a relatively wealthy country like ours, and we have a duty to stamp it out. It is a very disturbing fact poverty is still the greatest single threat to the well-being of and families in the UK.
India has said that it does not want influx of Tamil refugees from Sri Lanka into its territory, saying it is the responsibility of the island nation to provide food and shelter to civilians displaced because of hostilities there. CJ Amit supports India's concerns because he believes that refugee influx has raised domestic problems for India in the past.
This is Amit reporting on Instablogs from India. Refugees are the last thing India wants at this hour. Our country is already flooded with migrants and refugees from neighboring countries. India's porous borders allow all and sundry to escape lives, full of destitution on account of war or poverty back home. Such influx has raised domestic problems within India. Our neighbors never get tired of exerting their political, social and economic sovereignty. Their indisputable right to resolve the issues within their boundaries without any external interference could. They should. At the same time, they must remember that right and responsibilities go hand in hand. If they cannot fulfill their responsibility of ensuring their safety, they have no right to object to statements that arise from countries which are at risk of getting affected by their internal problems. It must understand that we cannot and will not provide for the refugee influx. To prevent that is the only option before Sri Lankans.
If you want your voice to be heard by millions, let Instablogs be your choice. You can contact us at cj@instablogs.com. That's all for today's show. We'll be back with fresh updates and more citizen voices. Till then, it's goodbye from the entire team of Global Report.